Hey everybody, we're live here today with special guests that have walked the Camino. This is our daughter Hilary Van Wagenen and her husband Tom Madigan, and they're visiting for the weekend here in Greensboro where we live. And I thought it would be interesting for you all to hear about their Camino experience and just any tips they might have from their experience, because a lot of people are interested in the route that they have walked.
So we did the Camino Inglés, and we went from Ferrol and ended in Santiago, and we did it Holy Week of 2018. So that was, I think it was the last week of March. I think Easter was like April 1st that year. So it was a really interesting time to do it, because a lot of Spanish families were with kids that were probably about 10 and up were doing that route, because they're all off school that entire week. So yeah, so that was cool.
Yeah, and it was so it was a time that a lot of people were off, which which meant a lot of the places along the way, some of the hotels and albergues that were along the way, not that many albergues on that route, and what few we found tended to be not open. And it was the rainy season, so it was a lot cooler. It was a little rainier. It was a lot wetter. It was actually sleeting as we walked into Santiago. I would have taken more pictures at the end, but I couldn't move my fingers.
Your fingers are numb.
Yeah.
Where is the Camino Inglés? It runs north on the coast, Ferrol, south to Santiago, and it's about how long?
It's like 116 kilometers, right?
So it's one of the distances that qualifies if your goal is to earn a Compostela. And obviously it's called the Inglés route because it is closest to to England. That's the closest point of Spain to England up that way. So you do find a lot of people coming from England and Ireland, well, UK, walking that route. It sounds like you had some hardship. That was not very fun, but
it was fine.
But just so that people will know, because I know, but let the people who watch this know, what are your future plans?
Well, we are lining up another trip over there for sometime early in 2020. We're still sort of figuring out exactly when and exactly what route, but yeah.
So you're going back.
We're going back.
Yeah.
Every time we talk about a trip, we're trying to figure out, well, what route are we going to hike? Like how many, what part of the Camino are we going to do? Or are we going to do part of the front? Because we really want to go over the Pyrenees. We haven't done that yet because the weather has been when you go early, that route is closed. When you go early in the year. So we were like, well, maybe we'll go in the summer and go over the Pyrenees, or maybe we'll go in March and do the Portuguese. So,
but sometime next year. So I just wanted them to say that like up front, so that you knew, even though there was a lot of hardship on their walk, they couldn't wait. They can't wait to go back. So,
certain amount of. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, a certain amount of hardship is part of the deal for sure, and everything just involves
part of what
trade-offs.
makes a pilgrimage.
That's it. It's a pilgrimage.
Exactly. I mean, I enjoy. I'm Catholic, and I enjoy the cold weather. Maybe a little bit more than you do. A teeny bit more than you do.
Probably a lot more.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay. So I'm going to ask. I always like to ask people, what's a favorite story that kind of stands out as a highlight that you like to share with people about your Camino walk? What would you say? It can either be funny or embarrassing or scary,
well, we have all those.
Scary or painful.
We'll
pick one. Each of you pick one and share.
I mean, there was the one so the longest day of that particular route, I believe it's about 28 kilometers. Is that right?
That's far.
Yeah. So it goes from Betanzos to Mesonavento, or that was where we ended up anyhow. And so Betanzos is this beautiful, lovely, fun medieval walled city in Spain. We would have spent like 3 days there if we could have.
It was
and
really
it's
cool.
right on the Inglés.
Yeah,
it's right on the
you'll go through that if you do.
You go
this
through the
route.
city gates.
Yeah, exactly. It's really cool.
And so we woke up on like what was our favorite day of the journey to that point, and we slogged through the rainiest, coldest, maybe not the coldest, but definitely the rainiest and the least enjoyable stretch. But that was great too because we booked everything ahead, because it was the off season. We thought it was probably, and it was our first Camino too, so we thought it was probably safer to just book every night. We could cancel if we wanted to, but it's a good thing that we did because everything was closed.
Yes.
But we stayed in a Peregrino hotel, basically, on the route. It was right next to a truck stop, so it was lovely. But we met a lot of great people there.
Yeah, that was fun.
We met a lot of fun people. There was a foosball table down there. There was a kind of an open cafe where all the pilgrims were eating. We met a really nice lady from Namibia originally, living in British Columbia. Right. Yeah, we were kind of travel buddies with her for a day or two.
Yeah,
that was great. But yeah, I mean, the thing I just remember is that coming in just absolutely soaked to the bone. And I think it was that day. All right, well, I'm not going to steal your thunder because this might be the incident you're about to talk about. But oh gosh, nothing felt better than coming in out of the rain that day. I think my bones were dripping.
Okay, Hilary, what about you?
Well, I have two, but I'll make them quick. So the first one that's funny is because it was Holy Week when we got to, I can't remember the name of the city, but it was the stop before we got to Santiago. So the night before, we went to a Maundy Thursday service. We were walking into Santiago on Good Friday, which was really cool. And it was all in Spanish, and we don't speak Spanish. And at one point, the bulletin board caught fire in the middle of the service. And the priest,
some prayer candles?
Yeah, there were prayer candles lit.
Oh, no.
And the priest,
and the bulletin board caught fire.
Yeah, the bulletin board caught fire. And the priest kind of looked back, and he was like, "Somebody put that out." And I was kind of like, does this happen a lot? Like, he was totally unfazed by it. He was just like, it's cool. And then he started singing the Gloria, and we were like, okay.
He just continued on with the service.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
But then the other memory that's just like really powerful to me is when we were walking into Santiago, and it was sleeting. So at that point, we're just like, we are going to get there as fast as we can, because and you're starting to be like, wow, back in 1000 AD when people did this in the Middle Ages, like, that was tough. They didn't have like high-tech fabric.
Right.
But so we're coming into Santiago, and there's always a bagpiper in the square because of the Celtic heritage in that region. And so he's playing the bagpipe, and he must have been playing some famous Spanish hymn, because all the people around us just stopped. They weren't pilgrims necessarily. They were just tourists that were there for the Holy Weekend. And they all stop and start singing. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. And it was this beautiful hymn. So it was like everybody sang us into the main square.
What a welcome.
It was so beautiful.
What a welcome. Bravo.
Yeah, it was. And there were some women that, saw us coming in, and they got all emotional watching us.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. They took our picture. It was sweet.
That's great.
Yeah. It was such a great moment because, this is I'm going to steal Hilary's line. This is hers, not mine. But yeah, like really when you finish your Camino and you're there outside the cathedral, it's like you're both a tourist and a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
That's really
It was really funny. Yeah.
You're in the plaza.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Santiago is just a beautiful city, so a lot of people just come there, as a trip too, not as pilgrims.
The closest thing we can think of to it, and it's nowhere as old, but in the U.S., St. Augustine is about the closest thing we have to something like Santiago. People do come there just because of the historic nature of the city, not necessarily because they're walking in as pilgrims.
Right.
But, okay, so so what would you say, or you've kind of alluded to this, but what would you say makes the Camino so special that you would do it the first time and then now you're going back a second time?
I mean, it really just takes you out of your head for a while. It's this long kind of repetitive process. You're walking, you're walking something, maybe you have poles, maybe you don't, but like you're walking through the countryside. It's you and whoever's with you, or you can be alone, and it's like you and it's you and God. There's nowhere to hide, and your body is occupied, so your mind can wander.
Yeah.
And you really, there's some people I know who have done it who aren't even very spiritual, who just enjoy that feeling of getting out of their head for a while, just getting out of their lives and just being someplace that really lends itself to reflection. And I mean, for Hilary and me, we spent probably 2/3 of the time we were walking, like thinking about the people in our lives and like how specifically we could pray for them. And we spent the rest of the time talking about, our marriage and how things were going and how life was going. And just, it's just a really good place to have those kinds of conversations that you don't have time for 10 minutes at a time in your lives.
Yeah. What about you, Hilary? Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think, one thing that was interesting about the Inglés is, because that's our only experience, we don't really have another thing to compare it to. But from what we've heard about like the Frances and some of the other routes, they can get a lot more crowded. And so you may or may not have an opportunity to kind of walk by yourself. But on the Inglés, and I think it was also the time of year that we were doing it, there weren't nearly as many people. And so it really was just us for a lot of the time. And it was wonderful. And, it would have been wonderful if God had brought us like with people too. I mean, I think it's really important to go with open hands because you just don't know. And one thing that's interesting about the Inglés is that there's a very specific, there are very specific stopping points, whereas I think on the Frances, because that route is more established, there are a lot more places you can stop if you're like, oh, I'm just so cold or whatever. But, like Tom said that day that we got to Maison de Vento, it was such a long day. We couldn't be like, well, the weather's just horrible, we're going to stop in this other town, because there wasn't another town. It was like, we're going to either stop by the side of the road or we're going to get to Maison de Vento. And so it was just not, the Inglés doesn't have the same amount of, I guess, flexibility that I've heard,
Well, there aren't as many breaks.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So that's something to consider, I think, depending on kind of where you are with your, like, for example, if our son had been with us, I think it would have been really hard, or we have a 10-year-old. And so, when we take him, we'll probably do the Frances just because it gives us a little more flexibility. But
let me just hop in and speak to that. We actually have a friend who walked with her 10-year-old. I think he was 8 at the time, and they actually lived in Santiago. And she did have to call a taxi that on the long day that they're referring to. They just couldn't do that. And so she called a Spanish taxi, who came and picked him up and took them someplace they could stay the night. And then they went back to the place where they had, gotten to, and started the next morning so they could get their Compostelas. Yeah. But, okay. Well, just really quickly, cause we just have a couple minutes. What would you say? A lot of people are getting interested in the Camino Inglés, and what would you say? Just pick one high point and one low point of the Camino Inglés, and how even with when you say the low point, how would you is there a way to get around that? Is there a workaround for it? So what would the high point be?
I think the high point was Betanzos. It is such a beautiful city. It's this medieval walled city, and you actually do walk right in through the city gate, and so that's really cool. The low point, I think, for us was probably the first day. You can break up the first day if you want, and we decided to break it up. I think you can either do, 26K your first day, or you can stop after 12K, which is what we did. And I can't remember the name of the town right now.
Neda, I believe.
Yeah, Neda. And you can stop in Neda. I would probably not do that again, because there's just nothing there. And the walk itself is kind of like industrial a little bit by the highway. And so I would say go ahead and truck on to the next city if you can.
If you can, right.
I mean, it's nice to have the option of stopping, especially if you're jet lagged or whatever. But Ferrol itself, like if you're going to take an extra day, what I would do is spend an extra day in Ferrol where you start, because it's gorgeous and it's right on the water, and it's just a lovely, lovely city. And just take a day to rest there. And then if you can physically do a longer walk, go ahead and walk to it's
Ponte Dune.
Ponte Dune.
Ponte
Go ahead and
Dune,
walk
yeah.
to Ponte Dune in one day if you can.
Yeah.
And then maybe take an extra day in Betanzos too, because both those cities are really lovely. So
So, all in all, summing it up, would you all recommend the Inglés to somebody who only has a week or
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
days?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
I think it is important to know that it's going to be a very specific kind of experience. Maybe it's not going to be the same kind of experience as the Frances, like if that's what you're looking for.
Not as much camaraderie with
Yeah,
pilgrims
probably
Maybe
and
not.
things like
And there really aren't that many places. From what we could tell, even if we had been there in the high season, I don't think there are that many albergues. So you don't have that kind of experience that you might have read about of staying in an albergue and getting to know all these people. I think that could be challenging.
Yeah, definitely. If you leave early enough, there probably would be people, but yeah, it's not the sort of, well, let's just see how far we get today and let God provide. It's not that kind of situation.
It's more of a targeted.
It is.
I think it
We've
is.
got a week.
It's a more specific
This is-
itinerary.
Which
and-
makes it a good way to start because it is plannable.
Because they gave you all
and
a
it's-
taste of the Camino
Yes.
life,
Yeah.
Yes.
and you really want to go back.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. We
Thanks
love
for,
it.
Absolutely.
thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. I mean, this was so great to have
Yeah.
you guys on, and so I hope everybody will enjoy listening to Hilary and Tom's experience about the Camino Inglés. And till next time, we'll just say, Buen Camino.
Buen Camino.